Here we go. All right, today we are going to talk about student-friendly grading practices. We are a school here that embraces the philosophies behind student-friendly grading practices. Therefore, I have decided to gather a couple of my coworkers with me today to discuss the benefits and or pros of student-friendly grading practices and why these benefits will hopefully help other staff members that may be reluctant to embrace these practices. This week's assigned readings and videos highlighted Ken O'Connor's as well as other educators' philosophies behind student-friendly practices. Today we are going to discuss and focus on the 15 fixes Ken O'Connor shares in his book, A Repair Kit for Grading. We will also highlight how student-friendly grading aligns with our guaranteed and viable curriculum learning targets and rubrics. This is Jen Stevens and Sarah Hartung, and both teach general education classes. Jen is a 4-5 classroom teacher, and Mrs. Hartung teaches second grade this year. So let's begin with our discussion. We're going to start out by talking about what are the purposes behind grading here. All right. So ladies, what are we grading when we talk about student grading here? When I think about it, I think that we are grading students on their understanding of the learning targets we have set forward in our classes.
And I completely agree. We have the understanding of concepts, and then like we had talked about in our report cards, we also have a characteristics of successful learner. And so in that section we have the other things that we're just checking to see, are they able to listen, do they put forth effort, do they hand things in on time. And so those shouldn't be in the other grading part.
Okay.
In my beliefs.
What about you, Sarah?
And also, yeah, the same, but also I think it's at that point in time too. So if it's the for end of the first trimester, how am I doing on this skill right now?
Yes.
And our ultimate goal with these practices is that by the end of the school year, we want them to be proficient or advanced in that learning target, that essential skill. So if it's not that way at the end of the second trimester, we are hopeful that it will be at the end of the third.
And that was something I said to a lot of the students after the last trimester. I said, if you look at your math skills, if you had a 2 and now you have a 3, see, that's progress you're supposed to make. And if you have 2s in a new area, that's just a new skill. You're still going to be working towards it for the last trimester, and it's okay. It's okay to not be secure right away with a 3. You're making progress.
Do you see that your students are embracing these, like the understanding of that the grade is no longer a traditional, you've earned an A, a B, a C, and they are more open or have a better understanding of that they're working towards mastery of understanding what you're teaching them?
I think that our students have only known that level. I think that's one of the pushes from some of the other 5th grade teachers. They want them to start to see what an A, a B, a C would look like at the middle school level. And so that's where there's kind of that, do we switch at a 5th grade because it's kind of a middle school, or do we stay with the whole school where we're looking more at, are you understanding the skill? Is it a 3? Are you secure? That sort of a level instead.
But that brings up the question that we had talked about earlier too, about why we don't see middle high schools as well as colleges embracing these student-friendly grading practices. Why are they still doing the traditional grading? When are they going to start to embark on that journey with us? I know that some high schools have, and that's been concerns from parents of those students. You know, how is that going to work as far as college admission? And so I think,
valedictorian.
yes, understanding those things. So it'll be interesting to see, but there's huge benefits to it, so they need to get on to that.
And if colleges would, then high schools would.
Right.
And I think some colleges have the pass-fail classes, and they have those sort of things where it's not the specific grade level either, or they have assignments that are pass-fail. So I think people are trying to progress, but
And it goes back again to our ultimate goal with student-friendly grading practices is for students to understand what they're not what they're being taught. Not this demonstrated this little snippet of time and there's your grade. You want them to be demonstrating it throughout.
And we talk about that with, we're all supposed to have our I can statements up. And so we talk about that as a group, like this is, we need to know by the end of the year how to add and subtract numbers under 20. You know, so we talk about that as we practice that too. This is something that, you know, we want you to be secure in, because when you go to third grade, you're going to build on that. So knowing where they are, you know, that's for them to kind of gauge, like, yeah, I can do that, or no, I'm still working on it. And that's why we're still practicing it.
And that goes back to their learning progressions too. So, okay, thank you. Let's move along here. Let's talk about, should students' behaviors be graded?
I don't know how they could be. I honestly, I don't know. If you have tons of things going on outside of school, even in school, if somebody's bothering you, how can that be graded? How do you make a chart that says, oh, this person did 5 out of 5 today? You know, it doesn't belong anywhere on a report card. It doesn't belong on any of those. It doesn't show if they understand a concept. And that's what we keep going back to, is the learning targets. What are the important things? And behavior doesn't seem to fit mine.
And I know here we have on our report cards, we have characteristics of a successful learner, and it has its own grading like legend. And so those are measured separately on there with a different grade legend than our learning targets are. And I think that you've touched on that. But how can we tell if somebody's listening? So my listening skills might look differently than yours, and should there be a percentage or a letter grade put on that?
No, I mean, it's important that you're letting parents know, because it affects how they're learning. However, I don't know how you can say this is what you got for your grade.
Right. Right, exactly. And I think that goes back to the third question that I want to talk about is thoughts on how attendance should affect a student's grade.
And if they're gone, that's going to affect their grade, because they're not there to be there to see the concepts, to hear the teacher the first time, to get caught up. They might already be starting a day or two behind, and it's going to be harder for them to get caught up. But again, that should just be we have attendance in a separate spot. Okay, they missed a lot, so maybe that might explain why they were missing some of the concepts.
Right. They're not demonstrating proficiency in a certain learning target. And I agree with you, Jen. I think it does affect their learning, because they're not here to get the concepts that they should be soaking up, and the activities that we're doing to teach them those concepts. But I don't think it's well, you get a 0 because you weren't here today.
If you can still do the skill,
then
you're secure in it.
Right. Correct.
And what does giving a 0 ever show? Lack of effort, or they weren't here.
Right.
So those aren't in the graded section anyways. Those would be in the characteristics of the successful learner, or in the attendance part.
Exactly. Okay. Let's kind of move into two things here. Let's talk about extra credit, or the use of bonus points, as well as group grades or scores. Is this student friendly? What is being evaluated here? So when I think of extra credit, I don't think about it as much down here in our building, because I don't think that's used, or use of extra bonus points, but I do see that being used as a parent in middle and high school settings. You know, don't use your bathroom passes, that earns you extra credit. Do this problem, this earns you extra credit. But what is that? I guess it goes back to, what is it measuring, you guys?
I think
is it
effort. It goes into the successful learner.
I'll do that. I'm all for, you know,
yes.
I was in high school, but that didn't show, I mean, what I was learning or knowing. It was showing that,
I guess if you had like a 3+ already in our world, and somebody went over and above and created some other project, and that showed that they could have a 4. But it's not going to be a 2 to a 3, because if you are still developing your skill, it's, you know, it's still showing, do you understand the learning target? It's not going into, oh, you did more work, here you go, I'm just going to give you another grade.
Correct.
It's, do you understand the concept is what we should always be measuring, not the extra work.
Right. Group grades, scores. Is it student friendly? What's being evaluated when we're giving a group grade?
How do you work well with others?
Yeah.
Right,
Effort.
but then that goes back into our successful characteristics of learning. That's
exactly.
not something that if I'm asking you to work together on a project to demonstrate your knowledge of fractions, like you're working in a group to do a cooking activity, and Sarah does all of the work, and Jen and I goof around, you're demonstrating that you're capable of doing that, but are we?
No. And so you shouldn't get to have my grade.
Right.
It should always be a question after the fact. What did you learn from this? And that should be what's measured. And you can also include, what did other people do in the group? What did you do in the group? What did they do in the group? So then that would go for effort.
Okay. So 0's for missing work, or you didn't do the work, so you get a 0.
I think we kind of touched on that one too. They shouldn't have 0s.
Well, it's
It's
not.
effort.
I mean, right? It's not showing if you know it or not. It's showing you didn't do it.
And instead of allowing them to just take that 0, I think it's important to have kids do the assignment or to redo it if it's not done. Fantastic. Okay, so currently we send home profile sheets here in our school district that share information about how our students do on our district-wide assessments, as well as their unit test scores and their Fontes and Pinnell benchmark reading assessments. There has been some concerns about the information that is being shared on those sheets, that they are not student and family friendly to understand when we're sending them home. And parents we talk about them during conferences, or some teachers do, but that's again a consistency that doesn't happen on a regular basis here. So if we are just sending them home in the report cards, what is that showing parents? As far as what is that measuring? Like, how do they look at it and go, okay, our school is embracing student-friendly learning practices, but I'm not quite sure what this profile sheet is telling me as far as my child's progression towards meeting those learning targets.
It's what they learned or what they demonstrated on that one day that they could do.
Yeah. I mean, and at least the second time they get it, they can see that there's hopefully a progression. And that's, I guess, what I focus on when I share it with them, because it's a lot of explaining. You know, I mean,
And that's why we explain it at the conferences. If they just get it in a report card, they're looking at the numbers going, is my child at grade level?
Right.
Are they not?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
This doesn't make, well, how does this help me know how my kid is doing?
Okay.
What they know.
Right. To conclude, and we won't take much time on this, but currently we send home report cards 3 times a year. We have 3 trimesters, and on those report cards, we talked about the characteristics of a successful learner. It has our attendance on there for those students, and then it also has our learning targets, or the essential skills that we are measuring students' progress with. My question is would it be more parent friendly and understanding the philosophies behind student-friendly grading if we sent home progress reports twice or 3 times, and then at the end of the year the report card went home?
I think it is. I would be okay with once in the middle of the year as well.
And we have our report card set up as our end of year goal, you know, so it makes sense. Okay, here we are at the end of the year. This is, you know, where they are.
Right.
So that part makes sense to have it.
And your progress report could just have that score on there as well, and say if this was where they would be at the end of the year. You know, you could have they're still developing. They're proficient.
They're developing, they're basic, they're advanced, wherever they may be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you, both of you, for taking time today to talk about why student-friendly grading practices are beneficial and important in the progression of our students' learning as we move forward.